Dead serious. When I start quoting Ted Lasso, you know that it's really affected me. That's really some of the only ways I can really just kind of deal with the emotions and everything like that, because it was tough. And looking back, in that moment, one of the most incredible things about this Bears team is how much that they made us believe each and every week, where everything just never felt like you were out of it. 2 weeks ago, this week, you're like, they're gonna route, they're gonna find a way. And to be honest, I think one of the emotions that I felt last night that I didn't really register was just being stunned that this whole thing was over, because we had just become so accustomed to this team going out there and winning. And I think that, going back and watching, and I can't tell you how many times I've watched the Cole Kmet touchdown pass over the last, we're closing in on 24 hours. Just the improbability and the look on the Rams' faces where they're just like, you got to be kidding me with these guys. Like they just won't go away. It's kind of like, I think from the Rams perspective or anything like that, it's like, this is like a horror movie. We cannot get rid of these guys. We've thrown everything at them, and they still just won't go away. And that was, and going into that and then coming down to that, that overtime where you get a stop, you force them to punt in overtime. Are you kidding me? It felt like this game should have been done. And so battling through all of that stuff and the disbelief that it is in fact over, it's been tough. It's been something that you're just kind of like, I wasn't expecting to be, as weirdly as it seems, to be battling those emotions today. But let's talk about it. So Jimmy, let's go ahead and start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Snap back, four-man rush. Caleb with a double move, throw down the left sideline. DJ Moore inside the 5, end zone, touchdown! Touchdown Bears! They've taken the lead on the Packers with 1:43 to go, 25 yards. Wow! Say it again. Wow!
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome to the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. Time for Bears Talk. I want to let everybody know that this episode is brought to you by the Twisted Shamrock, the place to be for Chicago sports. Whether you're a fan of the Bears, Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, Sky, or Fire, you need to be watching the games at Twisted Shamrock. They have monster screen televisions in their private party room over the main bar, and of course outside on their illustrious patio, which is probably not being used right now because the temperature is in the single digits, but still one of the best atmospheres to watch a game is Twisted Shamrock, the place to be for Chicago sports. And if you ever go there, order the old fashioned. It is one of the best that I've experienced ever, I will say. But I want to thank Twisted Shamrock for the continued support of this program. And starting here today on what I expected to be a victory Monday, especially, as that game started to unfold, first off, I just want to say here, I do want to give a lot of credit to the Los Angeles Rams. For the large part of the season, we had said, this was the most complete roster in the NFL, a team that not only had one of the best offenses in the league, Matthew Stafford, a definite Hall of Famer. Puka Nacua was the number one wide receiver in the league, a formidable rushing attack led by Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, stars in Devontae Adams, but also a ferocious front seven that did pretty well. So I think that, coming into this season, the Rams were considered one of the favorites for not only the playoffs, but to go to the Super Bowl. During the middle part of the season, just a couple of weeks ago before they went to Seattle, everybody thought that the Rams going to the NFC Championship game, at the very least, was a fait accompli. So for the Bears to go out there and battle the way that they did, I think is admirable. I do believe that, regardless of, I know the Rams fans are having a little bit of fun today, being like, we can play in the cold. I'm like, that they can. They were, I think that at the same time, as much credit as I do want to give to the Rams, it's a great team, a great coach, definitely earned it, and we wish them well in their future endeavors, including this weekend in Seattle. But at the same time, the Bears left a lot of opportunities out on the field. And I think that it's fair to sit here. And I know last night I spent a lot of time going through a lot of what ifs, a lot of things that could have been a lot different. If you think about this too, number one, right off the bat, Rome Odunze has an opportunity to catch a touchdown pass on the team's first drive. And the moment, even if the Rams had gone down and matched the score, which, obviously they did, but, I think the tenor of the game is really different. If the Bears are up 7-0 in that instance, I don't know if the Rams have, I don't want to say the energy, but I'm going to say, I think it's a lot different. I don't think that it's necessarily a fait accompli, which I think that's the second time I've used this expression. I'm sorry, I've done a bunch of shows so far today. But I really do believe that you really set a tone for a team that is, really kind of established itself as never say die, never give up, that kind of team. If you would have opened up with a touchdown on the opening drive in a game of that magnitude, with the crowd as hyped as it was, with the weather being what it was, we might have seen a very different outcome. And again, woulda, coulda, shoulda. We could sit here and woulda, coulda, shoulda all you want. But at the same time, I think it's important to note, there was that play that was let go. And of course, people will sit here and question whether Ben Johnson should have gone for the field goal instead of trying to go for it on fourth down. I will say this, and this is something that, I talked to Phil Atoshin about this, draft Dr. Phil, and his father was a legendary coach. There is something to be said about this. And I'm starting to come around to this way of thinking, because I know that, if for the people who say you should take the points, well, if the Bears would have taken the points on the first two drives instead of going for it on fourth down, it would have been 6. They would have been down 7-6, but instead they were tied at 7-7. But at the same time, I think that the game is different if you're up. But at the same time, and this is a philosophy that Draft Dr. Phil was talking about, and I'm starting to come around to this way of thinking, where you get those early points. And I know you can look back now those 3 points, and it matters, because if you look at the Green Bay game, having those 3 points was the difference. I mean, that was the difference in the game. So if the Rams go out there and Cole Kmet, I don't know that you run the same play with Cole Kmet, but at the same time, it would have been better to be up, by 3 points with 18 seconds left, as opposed to tie going into overtime and everything of that nature. So honestly, I look at that and I'm like, there is something to be said about taking the 3-point. And then in the second opportunity, I wouldn't go for the field goal. Then if you want to start going for the touchdowns, and I think that Ben Johnson is always going to be going after the touchdown. And so that would have been, then it would have been 10-7. Again, missed opportunities, just some uncharacteristic mistakes of this team, or you might say even characteristic, because this team, this receiving core, as much as we like them, they did have a lot of drops. It wasn't just Rome Odunze. Surprisingly, Colson Loveland had a number of drops in this one. 3 by my count. Some might say 4, but I think realistically it was 3. And I think that Colson Loveland looks at this and is like, yeah, those are balls that I should definitely be catching. And he had become one of the most reliable, if not the most reliable, hands on this team, to where it was shocking. And when you consider what he did last week against Green Bay, for him to drop those chances, it really hurt. There was just plays here and there. And listen, this is one of the things that happens, and you go back and do the post-mortem, and you go back and you look at some of this stuff, and you're like, yeah, this play could have happened here if he would have made this catch, would have done this, would have done that. You also think about, too, the DJ Moore play at the end, which I think everybody is screaming about right now. What about DJ Moore cutting off his route? I would say this. DJ Moore, who had self-reported, pointed to his helmet and pulled himself out of the game. And I honestly thought he was done for the afternoon or the evening when that happened. But he did go back out on the field, and I'm curious if he's, if something happened, if he suffered a concussion. I don't want to speculate on what had happened, but Shane Marsaw had pointed out, there's been a lot of times on tape this season where, DJ Moore has cut off routes and not really run through them, and really sort of, not been as crisp as he should have been, because I know everybody looks at that play, and I know that our friend Peter Bakarski was like, what a horrific throw. What are they doing there? Why? Like, what are we going for? Like, you in that weather, you cannot sit there. Even the Rams kept throwing the football, because you could not just sit back and be like, well, let's wait for the 48-yard field goal. Like, no, you want to make that as concrete as possible. You want to get as close to the end zone as you possibly can, if not even like just trying to get into the end zone. So I actually really love the read by Caleb. And when one of the knocks about Caleb Williams coming into his NFL career was that he doesn't throw with anticipation, which is exactly what he did right there. He threw with anticipation, and his receiver let him down by not running the correct route, because there is no way that DJ Moore does not get to that ball first. That should have been a chunk gain that really puts us in position to get a field goal, which actually would have set up the running attack one more time. And I think that you could have pounded it a few more times with Kyle Monangai, made that a chip shot, then you're on to Seattle. That did not happen, which then leads us to the next question of like, who is going to be on this team heading into the next season? Now, of course, over the next couple of days, we'll really dive deep into some of the players who are going to be available. We'll start talking about some other potential moves. It's interesting to me, and I know that people have been talking about DJ Moore, and I see there's comments coming through like, everybody wanted to move on from him. I even said a couple of days ago, because somebody was like, well, if I'm Buffalo, I'm calling about DJ Moore. And I'm like, he is not a free agent. He has still got a cap number of about 30 mil. I don't know that I don't know that we're going to be able to get off this contract number with DJ Moore. Although the Bears do have some room and have some maneuverability, I think this offseason is going to be very telling. And some of the players that we really love, and I am one of those people who loves DJ Moore, I think we might see some surprises on players who are not fitting the mold of Ben Johnson. Realize that he comes into this situation where he's got a team that, like we're going into it. You get one draft, you get one free agent class, you get one draft. And when you think about some of the trades that he made, Jonas was a great trade, because there were a lot of people who, when that trade was made, they're like, he hasn't played very well for the Rams, but went out there and had a great season. Joe Tooney, all pro, like amazing season. If I'm looking at this, and I'm going to be obviously getting the perspective of Nick Rohde and Greg Braggs over the next couple of days as we go into it, but to give you a little bit of a preview, I think that over the next couple of weeks, we're going to start to see how the vision for this team truly is starting to come together. And I know that for some of the draft misses, perhaps, that Ryan Poles has had in part of his career, and one of them, you wonder if it was Jaquan Brisker a miss or not, because over the last two games, he has been everything that we've really wanted him to be. So I look at this and I'm like, I think that we're going to be shocked by some of the names that we move on from, where you're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize we were going to do that. He had a good season. That's shocking to me. But this is going to be Ben Johnson's team moving forward, and I expect us to have a little bit more dog in us, if you know what I'm saying. Like it'll be one of those things where we can really find out what the culture of this team is going to be like, what kind of players we're bringing in, because, and I don't want to openly speculate, because I don't think that's fair, especially not right now, because we're going to go through the offseason and those decisions are going to be made by people that are not me. But I think that we'll see that. I think the number one thing for me, and this kind of stood out to me, like yesterday watching the game. Now I'm talking about offense right now. We can get to the defense in a second, but offensively, we don't have that guy, that running back that you can just count on to break an 80-yard touchdown run. Like, when was our longest run from scrimmage this year, I believe, was 38 yards. And the real explosive runner was Caleb Williams. And we started to see it a little bit at the end of yesterday's game, to the point, again, that's another one where I look at and I'm like, I really wish Caleb earlier in the game would have tucked it and ran a couple of more times, because he looked like such an effective runner when he was given an opportunity. And I don't know if it was the field conditions or what, or if he just doesn't want to be in harm's way. I mean, he played it 2 full seasons. So I think that allowing him to determine how much he wants to run is probably in the best interest of the team. But at the same time, we really need that Jahmyr Gibbs type. And I love DeAndre Swift, but you know, this might be another instance. Like, DeAndre Swift has been moved on from. Ben Johnson got rid of him before. Is this going to be another instance of, like, you know, again, we loved him. He had some great runs for us. He did a really nice job, but at the same time, really need to go out there and really attack the running back position, to the point too. I'm curious about this too, because everybody's like, well, they need pass catchers. They need this. They need to really look. They need to approach the defense this offseason similarly to the way that they approached the offense last year. Remember, they made 2 trades for 2 guards. They signed a center in free agency. They went after Ozzie Trapillo, Colston Loveland, Luther Burden III. They got Kyle Monangai in the 7th round. And you might think to yourself, there's no way we go offense this time, but don't be surprised if that first-round draft pick is actually used on an offensive player before they go out there and turn. And, of course, free agency is going to be something where there's going to be an opportunity to go out and address some of the needs, some trades. You know, I think about this too because of Chris Jones in Kansas City. Kansas City is up against it. Salary cap wise, could this be a thing much like last year where you were able to steal away Joe Thuney? Could you steal away Chris Jones perhaps? Here's the thing. Obviously, Kansas City might be of the mind of, like, we're never doing that again. We're never dealing with you after what Joe Thuney did for us, because of, remember, they did have an offense. I forget the guard's name, but they kept the guard, they kept one guard and traded us Joe Thuney, not the guy that we thought we were going to get in free agency, but Joe Thuney ended up being much better and kicking him out to offensive tackle or left tackle, excuse me, ended up paying off pass rush wise. So we'll see what happens there. But I think that we're not done on the offensive side of the football. I think there's going to be some, I don't want to say major changes, but I think there's going to be another pass catcher who's going to be brought in and another running back who's going to be brought in. I don't know who is going to be leaving, but you can kind of figure it out. But it's probably DeAndre Swift, and it's probably might be one of the other receivers that Ben Johnson did not draft, because what we saw out of Luther Burden, I swear to you, like, there are times when that guy is out there doing his thing and he's just moving, and he's so shifty. Like, he makes these moves. You're like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. Like, you think, like, there's no way he's 6 yards from he's 6 yards from the first down marker, but he makes a move, floats, does whatever, all of a sudden ends up with a first down. It was pretty amazing to watch that unfold. And then obviously on the defensive side of the football, there is going to be, they need pass rush help. They need, they have to figure out what they're going to do with Kevin Byard and all like that stuff. But again, a lot of these guys are going to want to stay because they want to play with Caleb Williams, because he made such a huge impression on them this season. And I think that is probably the thing that's the most impressive. So I think a lot of people are going to look at this Bears team, and you already see this on social media platforms now, where people are already talking about, like, well, here comes the regression. They're going to regress. They're going to do this. But my friend James Jones made a great point, and it's funny, a former Packer is sitting out here making great points. I got to get him on the show. But he said, look, he goes, obviously the Bears they can't do this thing where they always rally to win week in and week out. But remember, this is probably the worst that they're going to be for quite some time, because they're going to get better and they're not going to end up being in a position where they need to rally all the time, which is really the thing that scares people. And it's why people like Peter Bukowski and haters like that are trying to take down Caleb Williams, because I think so much so that people are like, that it's serious when they're still trying to detract against Caleb. And I thought it was interesting too, because a lot of it there was a lot of, when he came out of here, like he can't do the jump passes. He can't play in structure. He's not going to be able to play hero ball. All those myths have been busted. Now they're going after, his clothing choices, his nail polish, things of that nature, their homophobic rhetoric. That's when you know that you've really run out of things to be constructive about, because there's no real constructive takedown of Caleb Williams anymore. Like, you really can't, like, whatever. You're like, his DPA isn't whatever. Like, nobody cares anymore. So now you got to go out there for the superficial things. Like, that's when you know that their point has been lost, that they've got to be superficial. They've got to talk about things that don't truly matter as a quarterback. They're talking about, like, other things that are, hate mongering, so to speak. But at the same time, so I for the longest time, whatever we've seen a Bears team do well, and I think back to 2018, maybe the Rex Grossman Super Bowl year, it's been quite some, since forever, it feels like, where the head coach and the quarterback have been established. And that, to me, is the reason why I will continue to have so much faith in this team moving forward, is that we have finally married a quarterback and a coach together who are going to be here for the long haul, that we know they're going to go do it. Like, this is the real version. Like, they tried, like, Matt Nagy, who I like as a person and I think is a nice guy, and he's always been delightful in person to me, but it's like he wanted to be who Ben Johnson is, but it just wasn't in his nature. Like, remember, like, he's like, we're going to go for it on 4th down. And then he would get a delay of game penalty because he couldn't figure out what play on his BU sheet that he wanted to pull. And he didn't really have a plan, where Ben Johnson, regardless of whether you agree with his analytics or not, is confident in what he's calling. He's confident in what he's doing. And there are times that you go out there and you're like, what is this, man? Why are we throwing to Theo Benedict, even to Caleb? Like, why aren't you running it? You've got to, like, that was the thing too, where you're like, if you, like, I don't know, because it's like, you have him as an eligible receiver, then you have him downfield, have him block somebody. Like, oh man, that, again, like, talking about things like, I wish we would have done different, but again, we'll have plenty of time to go over that. But I think that for any Bears fan who is sad, and I mentioned this the other night, is like, it's fine. It's fine to be sad in the moment. I think that for a lot of us coming into this year, if you would have told us, like, listen, here's what you guys can achieve this year. Winning record, you're like, yeah, give it to me. Division, like, unbelievable. 2 wins against the Packers, of course. Winning a playoff game, like, bring it. We would have taken all of that, and we would have decided before the year began that would have been a successful season. And it's fine to do that, and it's great to feel that way. You really should. And I think that over the next couple of weeks and months or whatever, we're going to look back on this and say that was a successful season. But it's also fair that once you're there, you want to win the whole damn thing. It's kind of like, if I'm not planning to go to Disneyland tomorrow, but if somebody said, hey, I got free tickets to Disneyland, do you want to go with me? Yes, I would be delighted. And if we got there and Space Mountain was closed, I would be disappointed by that. Now, I had not planned to go to Disneyland, had not expected to be able to ride Space Mountain, but the fact that I got there and the ride was closed, I would be like, oh, that sucks. That's kind of a bummer. And I think that's the way the Bears fans should be able to feel right now. Go ahead and clip that part off for the socials. That was a great analogy. I'm going to pat myself on the back. So Jimmy or Sammy or whomever, later on, that's our social clip right there. But I think ultimately, I know that a lot of the haters will come out and they'll talk about regression and all that stuff. Don't listen to it. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff on the horizon for the Chicago Bears. And I want to thank everybody here who have joined us throughout the entirety of the season, but the content will continue to roll on. Want to let everybody know that we will be back on Tuesday with our guy, Nick Rohde, who we missed last week. And then on Wednesday, we'll do another edition of Take It to the Rank with Greg Braggs Jr. as we start to put a bow on this 2025 season, start looking forward to 2026. So thanks, everybody. Bear down. And Jimmy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.